My name's Joanna Ludlam. Very nice to see you again for this next episode of our series of Connected Compliance Dialogues. And today I'm with Susan Fornaro, who is the General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer at Klöckner Pentaplast, KP. And KP is a global producer of films generally for packaging in the pharma and food sectors. So Susan, very nice to see you again, and thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
Thank you, Jo. Nice to see you as well. I'm doing well, thank you. Happy to say.
It's been a while since we last spoke, and in fact, you and I met right at the beginning of the pandemic when you were quite new to the role and indeed to the company. So can you tell me a little bit about that experience? How has it been being a new General Counsel and CCO at this moment in time?
Very challenging, Jo. Yes, I joined KP about 7 weeks before lockdown came. So I would say I had very little, but thankfully some opportunity to get to know the company, to get to know my team, my colleagues on the leadership team, and at least from some perspective try to establish a relationship, which obviously would become really critical once we no longer had time together. So it was a challenging start for sure. At least I would say I had a bare minimum basis for working once everybody went into lockdown and had just gotten to know my team in person, and I think that was what helped to create a little bit of trust there before we really got thrown into the deep end when COVID hit. I think one of the things that was helpful during COVID about working from home is there was an increase in work for sure, because you're doing all the normal work as well as you're managing COVID-related issues and challenges. So there were more meetings, there were more issues to manage, as well as I was trying to, work on my 90-day deliveries, which maybe became more like 120-day deliveries. You want to make your impact early in an organization, and that in and of itself takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus. So to add to that, actually managing COVID-related issues from legal and compliance and just general, leadership perspective, along with my COVID steerco members was quite a lot. So there was a lot more work, very, very intense, but I was actually able to better handle that without thinking about commuting or getting ready to go to work, or all those things in between, or how long I had to take to go out and get lunch. It just became very easy. It was intense, long days for many months, but it worked well, I would say, and I'm very proud of the way my organization handled it. I think our business, our operations people who just performed amazingly well, and our leaders who managed through that, I think did an exceptional job. And I think everybody was equally challenged, and particularly impressed with our operational folks who really kept things going, kept the lights on, and we kept producing throughout.
And do you think that lack of informal communication has had an impact in connection with the compliance program? Have you seen, for example, a reduction in the numbers of reports of compliance issues?
Well, I actually wouldn't say so, but maybe for a different reason. And that is one of the things that I've done since I came on board is to try to create more awareness about our hotline, about compliance issues in general, about how we can report those, the fact that those are important and we want to hear about those. So, I've been trying to create more awareness in the organization around those issues, and also, create some processes which will facilitate managing those issues.
And are you able to share some examples of the steps you've taken to do that? Because I think it's a real challenge actually to keep a workforce engaged when that workforce is working from home largely and isn't in the normal scenario that that they would usually be in. So what have you actually done to really get that engagement and send your messages clearly?
Yeah, so I think the first step really is to identify what the gaps are and what things we want to focus on and create more awareness of. So I would say one of the major things we've done is to communicate via town hall. We do a really good job as an organization of communicating as part of a quarterly town hall meeting. So that goes to, I think there are close to 1,000 folks who wind up participating in the meetings. And so you have a great audience there. So I, prepared a presentation, which I think was the first of its kind to be shared at such a town hall, which is obviously a very important type of channel to reach the individuals. So we do presentations from our CEO, all the functional leaders. So it was a great channel for me to have to communicate the importance of compliance. The other thing is we've focused on certain areas where we think we would like to do more training, and we've identified both for this fiscal year as well as the coming fiscal year, what are the areas that we think are most important. And we're putting in place some continued training on those subject matters, and that will be rolled out largely via the web. When we can, it should be supplemented by in-person training. You probably know, I'm a big believer in the fact that in-person training, live training has to supplement web-based training. Most importantly, want to give people the opportunity to ask questions, because you can take a live training, but you're not able to really ask nuanced questions about specific situations. And I think that that's really a valuable tool in terms of people understanding, how does this really affect me and how do I handle a situation.
And have you seen any change in the risk landscape because of the pandemic?
So I would say, there's certainly changing laws on a jurisdictional basis. For example, in the US, there are new laws with regard to what you have to report in terms of people falling ill at work. And this can be something that is, not easily determinable, right? So, and the guidelines, I will say also, in some cases lack certain clarity and definition. So one has to view this in terms of how is this logically interpreted, and how are other companies managing this particular issue. So I think it's a lot about that, making sure that we're complying with the very local laws associated largely with employment, and also our obligations as an employer.
Can we talk about investigations during the pandemic period? Have you been able to continue your internal investigations program, or have you found that has been challenging given the inability to see people face to face?
I haven't found that it's been challenging. I think we've been able to do what we need to do as an organization to follow up on the things that we need to follow up on. I don't think that that's been compromised or less good in any way because we've been doing it remotely. So I think, obviously there are certain resources that we'll rely on who are local. And yes, I think perhaps there might have been maybe one or two more local meetings that we would have had to follow up. But in the end, I actually don't see that affected our ability to do our jobs.
So do you think that your priorities have altered at all because of the pandemic, or are you basically pushing forward as you were with your compliance program changes and your ambitions for the improvements you have?
So as far as the compliance program, I think they haven't changed. We have a lot of ambitions for our program. We've been able to start putting those in place, and I actually think the focus on supply chain has helped because it just has helped to highlight, how important it is that that we manage how we do business, in a responsible way. So that was already there, and now with the focus on supply chain overall, I think it only helps facilitate the work that we have to do going forward.
What about the supply chain? Because I imagine that is particularly key in your industry, and I'm interested to know what you've been working on in relation to your supply chain resilience.
Well, the first thing that came up during COVID really was, are you an essential supplier or not? And we were really getting questions from our customers as, making sure that, we could deliver on our promises to them. And we got communications from them indicating that they thought we were essential. So number one, first and foremost, we want to deliver for our customers always. But number two, we realized how important it was to make sure that, we were deemed an essential part of the supply chain. And since, as you know, we serve, amongst others, the pharmaceutical and food supply chains, we were an essential part of keeping that going. So that was a good thing for us, and like I said, our customers viewed us that way. Of course, that meant on the other side, we had to ensure that we had the supply coming through from our own suppliers, right, and that they were also going to keep operating and be able to deliver. And so there was, obviously a lot of communication involved. Our procurement team did a fantastic job, working through those challenges, and by and large, we were able to manage through that. So I would say that was successful and fortunate.
Tell me a little bit about sustainability. I know this is a big priority for your organization. I'd be interested to know whether you feel that you've made progress with that during this pandemic time, or whether it's actually hindered your plans.
So I would say we've kept going with our goals, and as a company, we are continuing to refine and define our goals from a sustainability perspective. It's a hugely important topic for KP, and that's something that I don't think at all has been hindered by COVID. I do believe that people see that there's an important role for plastics packaging to play, and we're an important part of that. We need to do so, obviously, in a sustainable way, and that was and continues to be a major priority for KP.
And so how does that impact the work that you're doing around your supply chain?
Well, we have a number of efforts underway in any case with regard to our supply chain. And as you can imagine, we get asked a lot of questions from customers about our practices, not just from a strictly sustainability perspective, but from more general ESG perspective. And those are conversations we have every day, and we also think about in light of the commitments that we make, and which organizations we're a part of, and where we want to be a part going forward. So I would say, there's definitely also a focus on our own suppliers and making sure that they're compliant. That's something I would say has received, since we've looked at our program, has received more attention and will receive more attention going forward.
Let's talk about the future of work and whether you think we're going to go back to how it was before, or do you think that our working practices have now changed irrevocably on account of COVID?
It's such a great question. I would say that I think nobody can deny that there are some things that have changed. That may be for some companies a reality in how they do things. That may be for other companies simply a view on what's possible. I think for us, we're looking to get kind of back to normal, if you will, and in terms of how things work. So I don't think that there will be ultimately major changes in how we work, except to the extent, obviously, we need to continue to manage those, either to comply or to just to manage through further lockdowns, which let's hope there aren't any, but that's a possibility. I think for us, it's going to be about, managing, getting people back at the right time, and as the regulations open up, and also feeling comfortable about how one gets to work, whether one has to take public transportation or not. Those are all questions that we have to take into consideration.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to connect with you as always, and really interesting to hear how you've been getting on, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much, Jo. Great to see you, and thank you for the opportunity.